Hello and welcome everyone to Theorycraft, the series where we take concepts and make theoretical techniques to accomplish the goals we set for ourselves. In this episode, we're going to discuss the possibility of an automated setup, which we can use to create stationary ghast fireballs that you can fire at your friends.
I've got balls of steel.
So, you want to catch them ghast balls, huh? Well, you might have already seen them floating around in your world, but before we can find out how to catch a ghast ball, we need to learn how they work. They look like this, by the way. To find out exactly how ghast balls act, I asked Wubbi from the ZipCrowd server to look into the code of Minecraft and find out exactly what makes ghast balls tick.
Fireballs have a certain speed, which is stored in the direction NBT tag. They also have an acceleration value, which does not get stored. On top of this, they have a constant deceleration. The acceleration is a constant value which increases the speed of the fireball by an absolute value. The deceleration, however, decreases the speed by a relative amount. Normally, this will make the ghast ball accelerate until the relative amount of deceleration is equal to the absolute acceleration, thus reaching a terminal velocity. When a fireball is stored and reloaded, for example when you unload and reload the chunks, the acceleration value is lost, and only the deceleration takes effect. Thus, the ghast ball will move, but stop after a short distance.
So, in order for the ghast ball to lose its acceleration value, we're going to have to be loading and unloading chunks. Well, in that case it looks like we're going to have to do a bit of chunk science. Well, there's no time like the present. Here is a grid of the chunks loaded around the player. The green chunk in the center is the chunk the player is standing in. The 13 by 13 area of yellow and orange chunks around the green chunk are all entity processing chunks. Entity processing chunks are just like the regular chunks you play in. Minecarts move, sheep move and eat grass, water flows, redstone works, etc. The outer 2-chunk thick shell of grey chunks around this 13 by 13 area is the lazy chunk region. This region is completely filled with lazy chunks. Lazy chunks don't process entities, but do process redstone. Here, I have named 2 of the chunks. If a player moves from chunk A to chunk B, the whole grid will move along by 1 chunk as well. Notice how the chunks on the far left-hand side of the grid are now lazy chunks, where originally they were unloaded chunks, and that the chunks on the far right-hand side of the grid were originally lazy chunks, but are now unloaded chunks. Thus, we have forced chunks to unload and load in just 1 chunk movement. The final thing we need to know is what happens when a ghast ball is sent into a lazy chunk. Well, if you can remember from before, lazy chunks keep entities loaded, but they don't process them. This means the ghast balls will just freeze in place as soon as they enter a lazy chunk. However, remember that in order to make them stop completely, we need to unload them completely. Otherwise, the acceleration value will never be removed. So, that's the theory out of the way. Now it's time to catch some
balls of steel.
We start with this chunk layout here. I'm going to nickname each chunk to better explain its role in this system. Chunk A is the starting point. Chunk B is the unloading point. And chunk C is the processing point. We begin our journey in chunk A, and we get a ghast to fire a ball at us. We then knock the ball, fired by the ghast, down the row of entity processing chunks and wait until the ghast ball enters into the lazy chunk region. Once the ghast ball has entered the lazy chunk region, we move to chunk B, the unloading point. As soon as we cross into chunk B, the ghast ball will instantly unload and its acceleration value removed. Now we proceed to chunk C, the processing point. As we travel towards chunk C, we will turn the chunks ahead of the ghast ball and the one the ghast ball is inside into entity processing chunks. This will give the ghast ball the opportunity to slow down until it stops. And that's it. We've created a stationary ghast ball. If you want to be able to mass produce these ghast balls, you're going to have to push them into another position from where they stop. For this, you will need some sort of redstone line, depicted by the red line in this picture. As long as you don't put any redstone inside the chunk which unloads, the chunk with the black dot in this picture, you will be able to make ghast balls to your heart's content. Thanks for tuning in to the first episode of Theorycraft. Please support me with a like if you enjoyed this video and leave your comments down below.